Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jack Long, the Mad Scientist, and today I want to cover a scenario that pops up quite often on the social media groups where the bottom of your panel is chipping out, being created by your end trimmers. Okay, so let's jump into it. Okay, so what happens quite often is as the panel is processing through, if you have the end trimmers that are on slides, so they slide down, what happens on quite often is you will chip out the bottom of your panel, and there's several causes for this. So when somebody comes in and they say, oh, your problem is blank, and their initial diagnostics is just to say it is this. Sometimes that is true, but more often than not, it is multiple reasons that come together, but there's no singular cure for that problem. So there's a few things we need to do. We'll discuss kind of a design principle of these stations. Most of your manufacturers will do something similar to this. Holz-her has a similar design. BSC, Chahisa, everybody has something similar to it. The Homegs and the Brandts have something similar to it, although as I'm speaking, those are the lines that I have the least experience with. So bear that in mind when we're talking about the concepts and how the machines thinks. They all kind of do it the same way. Each one does it a little bit different. Okay, so the problem exists mostly on the machines is like this, where the end trimmers are sliding down. The cause of it, a lot of times, not always, is from your shoe, when your shoe is coming down. And one of the issues can be if your trimmer is tweaked, and as it's falling, that is applying excess pressure to the bottom of the board as it's falling. So that is one thing. And if you have that scenario, the easiest way to correct it is to, first off, you want to make sure your machine is level. And the correction for it is to put a machinist level across it and then true that back up. Now that happens on occasion when the machine has been tweaked, and it's usually on the tail trimmer, where the tail trimmer will get hit by the panel behind it, and that's a whole different, that's much more in depth. Usually there's a failure in the security system where the panel should never get there. There's a whole scenario. So be aware that does exist, but we're not going to cover too much into that because it's probably, of all of my problems, the least popular. Usually when I have this problem, it's because somebody has not cleaned, like this roller right here. Not all machines have this roller. The BSCs use them. I want to say SEM uses them on the tails. Sometimes we'll have them on the tails, but nonetheless, this will get contaminated with dust. This one down in here will get contaminated with dust. Base of the shoe will get blemishes on them, and that will create the chip. Okay. Another scenario, which is much more common, is if it's only chipping on the front, which is where a lot of your problems are at. When the panel is sliding down and the board proceeds across, this trimmer is almost always commanded, as soon as it finishes cut through, it's commanded to jump ahead of the part. So as it's coming down, it jumps forward and gives clearance to this roller as the board passes over top of it. If for some reason that roller or that mechanism right there is not advancing the trimmer out of the way, and I believe Frevol, memory serves me right, Frevol does it a different way, where it's less critical for that, but nonetheless, it's that transition because that corner is very fragile. So if this trimmer is not jumping ahead and down and out of the way, it creates excess stress on that fragile millimeter corner and chips. Now, there is solutions to that, or probable causes would probably be a better way to say it, is that you could have mechanical issues as far as maintenance, where you're supposed to lubricate these beams, the rails. If the guides are not lubricated, you create resistance, You also could have air pressure issues, or you could have exhaust flow issues. So the exhaust flows is, you'll see this is a shuttle valve, and this is my exhaust flow, and that just happens to be this type of system. Some of them are going to be ported on the end of the valve. It's like this. And what you want to do is, first off, monitor it to see what it's doing, and I usually put a camera in here and watch it and see where the problem exists. And because it is pneumatic, it's not outside the realm of probability that the pneumatics is just breaking down, and that you open your exhaust flows up just a little bit and then put them back into the same spot, and then the problem goes away, because it's pneumatics, and the rubber inside will break down, things like that. The other thing that you have is that you have different pressures on them, and again, this is a BSE, so we have a master pressure for the entire system, and we have one for the tail trimmer, we have one for the head trimmer that's in high speed, we have one in the tail trimmer that's a slow speed. If these are out of sorts, these two are differential pressures that assist the part as it goes down, and those could be out of sort. Okay, so there's something that we need to discuss on that. When people are in there, and my fellow technicians that communicate, we all kind of know each other on the social media, we see people are commenting about, you need to adjust your pressure, you need to adjust your pressure, you need to do this, that may be the solution, but don't be so quick to react, because there's a couple factors in this. So one, we have the mechanics. Assuming the mechanics are working correctly, then we have to have the correct pressure. The flows control speed. So if you don't have enough pressure, you don't have control of the station. The speed is then allowing us to control the station. Now, I can't tell you you're going to raise this one, lower this one, lower this, because you have to analyze the system and make the correct adjustment. And perhaps, big P, perhaps it is going to be to tweak the pressure. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's the flow, sometimes it's both. A lot of times a simple get in and blow the system out helps. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the whiteboard, and we'll draw out a couple scenarios that's a little bit more advanced, where it is actually not a machine. It's not a machine problem in here. It is a panel problem created by the process that is producing your panels. Okay, so give me just a moment. We'll get over to the whiteboard and go from there. Okay, now we're at the whiteboard. One of the situations that arises is, if you can imagine, this is my panel, and when I'm producing this, if I'm producing on a saw, this first scenario does not exist, because the saw blade, as it cuts, it's going to, and we know it's cutting completely from top to bottom. The scenario that I want to discuss is when you're cutting on a CNC and your router is going through, and a lot of people will cut a little onion skin at the bottom, and when you're looking at that little onion skin, it creates a lip down here at the bottom. So when your shoe comes up and it rests against the side of this, and then it's sliding, it catches this chip right here, this little onion skin, and causes it to chip. And that can be created by a number of reasons: dull tooling, bad setup, or a process that, there are reasons that you're going to want this, but there's reasons you need to understand, as in this machine. There are reasons that having onion skins need to be perhaps thought differently, or processes need to be thought out a little better on that. Okay, so that is one scenario. I am not a CNC guy at all. I know what one is, but that's about it. I can spell CNC, but that's about the limit that I care to know. Okay, now a second scenario is that when you go to run on a CNC, that your CNC is not cutting a square edge. And you might say to yourself, it is impossible for my CNC not to cut square. And that is typically true, but not 100%. So what can happen is, when you're running this, what can happen is you'll get bit deflection. And depending on how the machine is set up, and all the parameters that the office drives for us, that sets up production rates, and you may have a narrow bit, for instance, maybe a 1/4 inch bit, but the office says, you know, we got to run at 100 inches a minute or whatever that number is. So as that tool takes off, you'll get bit deflection. And that bit deflection can create problems like this, where the edge, instead of it being truly 90 degrees, is at a little bit of an angle. So as that shoe that's on our machine goes to fall, instead of that shoe referencing the full width, it puts extra pressure down here on the bottom, and it will cause it to chip. Now, is that a absolute in every single scenario? No, but nothing in an Edgebander ever is. On occasion, you'll have something, you'll find it on the first shot, but normally in this scenario, you're going to have several minor contributing factors, and then eventually when you pull them all together, you get rid of it. Okay, another scenario that can happen with it is if when you have a debris that's built up on this, and you know, the chrome, if the machine is old enough, you start to put wear patterns in your chrome. So as it starts to come down, it just grabs traction on it and chips out that bottom. And as crazy as it sounds, there are some melamine surfaces, or whatever you want to call that, finished surface. There's, you know, different types of this stuff now. Going in and waxing those shoes will help. So if you get some of the old paste wax, like the Minwax paste wax, wax up that surface, that will help. It's not an end-all cure, but it will go a long way to lessen that friction. Okay, so that's kind of an overview why they're chipping. Most of the time, the issue is in your pressures and your flows, to be quite honest with you. You either have dirty shoes or your pressures and your flows are off. Okay, so I hope that helps you work your way through these. It is a very frustrating problem because when it fails, it's always on the first pass as it goes through, and it seems like it's not on every single panel, but it's enough that when it does happen that it gets expensive when you have to keep reproducing these parts. Okay, so as always, guys, be safe out there, wear your PPE, and let's go make a million.